Hello and welcome to the Blessings in the Streets podcast. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and in studio with me this evening is a phenomenal woman that I recently had the pleasure of meeting across social media lines. She is a realtor, she's a mom, but her most important attribute is she's a woman of God, and she's taking time out of a very busy schedule to hang out with us this evening, sharing a little bit of her journey, a little bit of her story with the hopes of inspiring, encouraging, and uplifting others, especially when it comes to dealing with the challenges and storms of life that we all deal with in some fashion or form. So, with that said, it is my privilege and honor, ladies and gentlemen, to introduce to you our special guest this evening, Miss Mesia D. Mesia, thank you so much for being with us on the show tonight.
Thank you for asking me. I'm so happy to be here.
I am happy as well. I'm glad you accepted our invite, and I'm looking forward to hearing your story. And again, I know you're going to be a blessing to us. So I don't have any doubt about that. I'm just excited to finally have a chance to formally meet you and get a chance to engage in this manner. So, with that said, before we jump into our segments, though, I do want to give you an opportunity to share a little bit about yourself, who you are, where you're from, what you do, kind of give our audience a taste of who is Mesia D.
Okay, well, as you said, I'm Mesia D, and that's a name from like high school. That's how my friends still to this day call me. That's why I abbreviate the D on the end. From Fort Worth, specifically from Eastwood. So grew up and graduated from Dunbar High School. Um, I'm a mom, which is that's my main role is being a mom, and it's been the privilege of my life to be a mom. I think taking care of someone else really helps you figure out who you are and know what you want or don't want in life, especially if you take the time to look at that person that you're being accountable for and raising, and knowing that you want to be a role model for that person. So mom, and I'm a realtor, mostly work residential in North Texas. um, Help out at the school a little bit, and am just happy about this phase of life because it's a transition for my child who's going to be graduating, which means it's a transition for me. And so I know we're going to talk about some stuff a little later on, but that's probably the main thing. That's the place that I am in life right now, is understanding life is just about transitions and being able to know when it's time to transition. And like I hear the people say, like in basketball, you got to know when it's time to pivot. So that's a little bit about me.
Love that, love that. And I've had a chance to see some of the photos and even a couple of the videos with you and your son, so I can tell you guys have a truly close bond, and I identify with that totally. You know, thinking back on my relationship with my mom and how tight we were, and so it's always great to see that. And you said your son is about to graduate. Is it graduating from college, graduating from high school?
He
Which one is
graduates
it?
high school.
Oh wow! So see,
Yeah.
so you're in the same boat with me because my daughter is graduating this year from high school. So as you
Yes.
said, it's a transition. I'm not ready. I'm not ready. I
Really?
know I'm gonna be a mess. I'm gonna be a mess. I'm gonna be a big baby when it when it happens. So but I have been blessed as I know that you have in terms of
Yeah.
just having good kids who have the
Yes.
right mindset.
Mhm.
And are not, problems. And, sure, kids are going to be kids, but they got their heads on straight. And that's a credit to you as a parent that you raised him right. You imparted in him the values and the standards that he's supposed to have. So I have no doubt that he's going to be successful in whatever endeavors or ventures he gets off into. But as you
Yeah.
stated, this time is, I don't know who's more stressed, if it's us as the parents or the kid, because my daughter just, between trying to tell you, apply for these scholarships, because you need some money, because I don't know what you think is sitting in the account that's going to pay for these expensive tuitions, all these schools that you're applying for. But I need you to get that money.
Listen, maybe that's what your next segment is. You could have someone on who can give us the psychology behind getting the kids to get on board, because this is the point of contention right now for my son and I. Like you said, I think about, and I really do thank God that he gave me the kid that he gave me. So there's, again, part of the process of being a parent is sitting and kind of just looking around and saying, God, you could have gave me any kid, but you gave me this kid. I think my son was crafted just for me. He's perfect for my temperament, and we're butting heads now, but I'm a nature lover, spend a lot of time outside. And so I've enjoyed having birds to come and nest at my house and watch the process of a parent building a nest and then parent laying the eggs and then eggs being the baby birds are here now, and watching how the parent takes care of that bird for so long. And then at one point, the parents leave that nest and those birds have to figure out how to follow the fly. And that's what I remind myself as we're going through this process. When he and I start butting heads, I say, hey, Misha, he's on the edge of the nest. It's time for him to leave. And so don't look at it like he's being, mean or aggressive or whatever toward you personally. Look at it as he's breaking away. And however God has set that up for him to be able to break away, that's just what we're going through right now. And he needs to figure out how to get this money. because and so I hope that I'm not scared seriously about you having a segment for that. I pray that I'm not pressuring him in a way that he becomes nervous or uncomfortable about the conversation of money, but I try to make it applicable to the next phase of life. Like, hey, you're going to go to college and this is your next phase where you're on your own. I'm not going to be there calling you about how much money you're spending for this or that, or are you taking care of this? And then you're going to go have a career. And I'm not going to be calling in asking you about your money. So this applying for scholarships is like, it's like a job, and it really is a job. So I'm with you. I think we have wonderful kids and they're going to be just fine as soon as they get that money.
Everything you said is going on right over here. That whole conversation, the button of heads, like trying to help you. Like
Yeah,
you don't realize because they don't realize how fast this time is going.
it's fast.
And like, do you realize in a couple of months you're gonna be graduating, and you need to make a decision where you're gonna go. And again, even if it's just a scholarship a day that you put in for, you need this money. And like I said, we're not trying to pressure you, but we are trying to say that, hey, I just want you to be. Now you mess around if you want to. You be going up the street to be at the
Right
community
there.
college and stuff. You keep playing if you want to. Nah, because I know what that tuition say. So play with me if you want to.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
yeah, you're totally right, and like you said, that probably would make for a wonderful show because I know that there are many parents that are dealing with this and just the whole dynamic, and it's crazy because and I know we're getting momentarily sidetracked, but it's crazy because it's like if you come up, especially if you came up on your own, maybe not having a lot resource wise and everything, and then now you've been blessed to provide your child with a life that you didn't have, and all of those things. It's a good thing in one sense, and then sometimes you wish that there was a little bit of struggle because perhaps they would have a better appreciation for it and understand like
Absolutely.
this didn't just happen magically. These things don't
Mhm.
things don't just get
Mhm.
paid for.
Mhm.
There's a bill that goes with all of it.
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know and
Mhm.
and they kind of get comfortable with the lifestyle because it's all that they know. But as you
Mhm.
stated, we're trying to prepare them for life, and actually, even though we're having this conversation, it actually ties into the title of your show. There is a next.
There
They
is
need
a
they need to understand there's a next, and in this next, there isn't the parent that's always there babying and coddling you and fixing everything. You have to step out and exercise your independence and do your thing.
Mhm.
And this is a part of
Mhm.
life.
Mhm.
I mean, which
Especially for the parent like me, because so what I heard you say is that you are not ready for your daughter to go, and I feel like part of that is probably like a dad daughter
it is.
bond, right? So there's part of what we'll talk about because I don't have that. I didn't have that dad daughter bond, and so with my son, I am ready for him to go. When people ask me like, "Oh, you're gonna be so sad, and you're gonna be this, and you're gonna be that," I said, "No, I'm not, because I am an only child. I grew up by myself and the only person in the house, and I'm cool with me. I love being alone." And the other part is the difference. They ask you what's different about your childhood versus how you raise your child. So what you just said, my childhood as an only child, very well taken care of. I feel like I had a pretty good childhood, but it was a very what's the word, limited, like hanging out, going to kick it, having fun, and what college do you want to go to? Because for my family, it was let's keep you right here. You don't ever go too far. And even though it's a program over there that'll help you get where you want to go, we don't want you to go to that program because you're gonna have to ride a bus and we don't know what can happen. I don't have that for my kid. I want my kid to see the world and whatever makes him happy and where he thinks he's gonna flourish, that's where I want him to go. So they have a totally different, in my opinion, I think he's a totally different opportunity than what I had growing up.
That is so true, and again, spot on everything that you're saying. And even I was just kind of chuckling to myself when you talked about, I love being outdoors, and I'm thinking these kids don't even understand about the fun of being outside. We would have been losing our minds being up in the house all the time. We wanted to get out and just
Yes,
you had to make us come in the house. You had
yes.
to threaten us. You better be in before these street lights come on. You better be in. Whatever. These kids are just as comfortable
In the
sitting right up
house.
in this house on that phone, doing
Mm-hmm.
their thing, and
Mm-hmm.
content. And like yourself, I mean, I was a single, only child. My child is an only child, so
Mm-hmm.
so it's like you
Mm-hmm.
want them to have that opportunity to just really come into their personality, come into
Yeah.
their own, and
Yeah.
really see what they were created for, what they were made to do. And I think college is an excellent opportunity for that to happen. I know that's where the transformation moment was for me, where I
Mm-hmm.
just kind of came out of that shell, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm hoping the same, of course, for my child, because some personalities about her were similar to me at this stage of life, and I'm like, yeah, I want you to. I want you to come up out of that because I see
Mm-hmm.
greatness in you and I know it's
Mm-hmm.
there. And I
Mm-hmm.
want you to build up that confidence and, if
Mm-hmm.
you will, again, to our title, there is a next, and I want you
There
to be
is a
ready for
next.
the next. I want you
Mm-hmm.
to be ready
Mm-hmm.
for when it comes. So you will one day be in a position, whether it's on a podcast or in some other setting or platform, to tell your story, to tell your journey about where you were, how you came through that, the challenges and the storms along the way. So all of that matters. I want I want her to build that same journey, that same story, and be able to impart it in perhaps her kids or into other people that God places her in front of, that she can pour into and encourage
Mm-hmm.
and uplift. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, we're on the same page with all of that. It's
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
it's just a journey in itself. But with that said, I do want to jump into again, where your story begins, because this is why I like to take moments like this to reflect back, particularly reflecting back on childhood days, because I do believe that there are encounters. I do believe that there are people that we meet, experiences that we have that, while it doesn't necessarily make sense
Mm-hmm.
when we're in our younger years, because we're just kind of going through the motions and doing life, as you get older and as you begin to understand really what your purpose is, what you're supposed to do, what you were even created for, why am I even here?
Mm-hmm.
You start to reflect back on those moments and say, you know what, that's why I had to go through what I went through. That's why I had to experience what I experienced, whether it was a good experience or whether it was a troubling or challenging type of experience. Either way, it wasn't by accident, but instead it was by design in order for me to get to where I am today, to do what I'm doing today.
Mm-hmm.
So with that said, if you would take us back and share with us a little bit about what was it like for you growing up. Again, fond memories you have about growing up, as well as any particular challenges that come to mind. You could share that as well. Kind of give
Mm-hmm.
us the backdrop of where your story begins.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'm gonna start with all the good stuff. And so the good stuff is specifically related to what you said about being outside all the time and the street lights coming on or whatnot. So my childhood was mostly spent at my grandmother's house. And my grandmother had lived in her home, I don't know, probably 30 years. Like she raised, my mom and my uncles in that house or whatnot. So she knew all the people on her street. Like we had a neighborhood, right? Like we were neighborly. So all the people on her street. And she had a backyard. And I guess that's probably part of the story is that I grew up in a house. And even when my mom lived in apartments, my mom and I lived in apartments several times, but my grandmother's house was always my house. So with that house came this big ranch backyard where I spent all those young years daydreaming. And my favorite thing to do was make mud pies. Love making mud pies. Um, have friends come over or whatnot. So there was my childhood. Just again, very, very well taken care of. Shelter is probably a word I would use because I was protected from a lot of stuff that I know was happening in other households. And these are things that I like you said, reflect on as an adult now, where I'm really appreciative of how I was raised, where at the time I probably didn't understand why I couldn't go over people's houses and why I couldn't spend the night or whatnot. Now I understand why. And I'm very grateful for my mom and my grandmother. So, most of my time spent there. Grew up in church, so anything there was at church to do, I sang in the choir. I was a usher. I was drill team, emceed whatever they had going on or whatnot, which was probably helpful for my personality. It made me stand up in front of people and made me sing, even though I don't have the voice to sing, which is probably what I need to get back to, is being in front of people. Because, I guess part of what we'll talk about this is I went in hiding for a while, and probably am still kind of in hiding, and have silenced myself or whatnot. So, okay, so there's the good part about growing up and, again, having a good home life and good community. School was great for me. Like, I love school, even to this day. I substitute teach sometimes, and I think teaching is probably the best thing for a certain personality type. I think it separates so many of us, whether you're a teacher at a school or whether you're a parent that is willing to teach your children. Because I know parents who know a lot, but they won't share it with their kids. And why would you hold on to this information and take it to your grave when you could tell somebody and improve their lives? Like you said that. You said about us being able to tell our story, there's a next. If you share with somebody, that gives them a next or whatnot. So I love my teachers, still in contact with the teachers from elementary to high school right now, because that was a very important part of my life. And then on the other side of that is things that I wish had happened during childhood that really didn't, which was like how we talked about scholarships and, having money to do whatever. We didn't really discuss finances. So I think that's something that I missed out on as a kid that would have been very helpful for me in like this in adulthood or whatnot. And there were a lot of secrets. So my grandmother um, was like she's like the pillar in our family, like whether it was for her children or for her siblings. So my grandmother was one of 8 children. And wherever they were in the United States, if something went on, my grandmother was the person to call, or the house that you would come stay at, including myself, cousins, whomever. So her being that person, she knew all the information, which meant I knew all the information because I got to be there or whatnot. And a lot of information that you get in a household it's information that's to be held in secret. It's not anything that you ever tell. So as a child, I grew up not having experienced what a lot of people went through, what their trauma was that they experienced directly. It wasn't my direct trauma, but indirectly, because I heard all the stories and I knew what was happening. Those are burdens that sat on my shoulder because I had that information, still hold that information to this day, still the protector, still know all. And when I see the people, still kind of teeter totter because I feel like, man, this happened to you. And I have to treat you in a certain way, even though you might be being rude to me. So, that's those things about my childhood still present. I'd probably say what's most influential that I understand now is I'll give you a little story. So I used to go to a YMCA, and this is probably before I started elementary school. I'm thinking, at any rate, I remember this moment that we were all in the gym and everybody went out, on the gym floor and they were playing and having fun or whatnot. But there was a little girl who was in a wheelchair. And I don't know what she had. I don't know if it was like I don't know if it was like cerebral palsy, or I don't know exactly what her diagnosis was, but I remember seeing her sitting on the side in her wheelchair against the wall and not being able to go out and to play with everyone. And so that moment for me was, do I go play with everybody else that's on the court, or do I go over here with her? And I went over there with her. And my whole life has been about, just seeing that person that doesn't seem to be seen and befriending that person, even to this day. I just want everybody to know that they're important and that I've seen you for just that moment that I was with you. I saw you and hope that they can take that with them, and it might mean something or something. So
Wow, wow. I love that. Thank you for your transparency and sharing, those earlier years in life. I don't believe that none of these things happen by accident, and that there is a bigger purpose, there is a bigger meaning to it.
Mhm.
I totally relate with to you when you talk about, having those, questioning when you're a kid about, why do I have all of these limitations or restrictions, if you will,
Mhm.
why, feeling like maybe my parents are being a little bit overprotective, or what have you, or I'm feeling a little bit sheltered. But realizing later on that, yeah, that actually mattered. It helped shape me to become who I am, because
Mhm.
I had, a parent or a grandparent in my life that saw, what was going to be necessary to keep me locked in and focused, and not be, I guess, just say, minimize the likelihood of me getting caught up in the
Mhm.
distractions and the mess that may be out there, whether it's stuff that's going on in the streets,
Mhm.
bad company that you keep, and things of that nature. I remember having those boundaries about how far I could travel. I mean, I better be pretty much within earshot of, if my name is called. I mean, I remember my friends used to joke with me how my grandmother would stay. We would live in an apartment, and how we'd be in a noisy big park,
Mhm.
and and I could just, all of a sudden, in the middle of all the noise, I'd be like, I gotta go, and they'd be like, why you gotta go? My
Yeah.
grandmother just called me. I'm like,
Yeah.
we ain't hear nothing, and then all of a sudden, like 10 seconds later, there it is again. I gotta go.
Yes.
And they
Yes.
looking at me sideways like, what?
Yeah.
Or only being able to ride my bike, a certain, number of blocks. And then if they want to keep going, I'm like, well, this is where I stop, because I can't go further than that. It seems very restrictive. It seems very over the top, if you will, but it's necessary. And again, I don't just look at it as a parent or a grandparent looking out for you, but I look at it more so now that I understand God is in the midst of this, because he's imparting that into those who have been identified as our caretakers, our parents, our grandparents, to watch over us, to say, no, keep him, keep her where they need to be,
Yeah.
because I got something for them. They don't know about it yet. They don't understand. They wouldn't even understand it if I shared it with them now.
Mhm.
But the day will come when all of this is going to make sense. And so
Mhm.
I have to create this setting. I have to create this boundary, if you will,
Mhm.
to keep them kind of locked in and centered, if you will.
Mhm.
But then there's the other part of it, that when you are that kid who grows up like that, that you might not necessarily, and we talked about that at the top of the show with our own kids. It's like, you might not come to that moment where you or other people are able to see the real fullness of who you are, the fullness of your personality.
Mhm.
And so you tend
Mhm.
to, as you said, you tend to kind of hide,
Mhm.
withdraw.
Mhm.
I'll do what I'm told to do, but I'm not always necessarily wanting to do it, because I'm consciously self-conscious in my mind, thinking, what will people think? Will they look at me funny? Will they talk about me? Will they tease me? Not having the confidence and believing in myself. So sometimes, in the midst of a parent or grandparent being protective, it can have that unintentional, if you will, that
Yeah.
unintentional negative ripple effect,
Mhm.
to where you start to kind of withdraw, because you actually find yourself withdrawing a lot of ways, because you're trying to people please. It starts
Mhm.
early. I don't want to disappoint
Mhm.
mom or dad or grandma or
Mhm.
granddad. I don't want to. So I'm a play along, even though it goes against this urge that's inside of me that says there's something more for you to do. But I'm struggling with that.
Mhm.
And so, as you were sharing that, I was totally identifying with that, because I
Mhm.
remember being in that phase of just not knowing, and again, wanting to people please. And then I also like the fact, which I again identify with, and I'm sure some of my listeners do as well, is when you talk about knowing about certain things.
Mhm.
And then, because you know it, it's not so much knowing it so you could go run out and tell it, but
Mhm.
because you have the heart that you have, you
Mhm.
you feel empathy for people who go through, whether it's the little girl in the wheelchair at the YMCA, or whether it's something going on, with one of your friends in their households, or something like that. You feel for it, and your
Mhm.
natural desire when you're that type of person is to want to protect, to want to rescue, to want to fix the problem. And
Mhm.
while the intention is good, it can sometimes put a weight and burden on yourself that you were never meant to carry. It might have just
Yeah.
been enough for you to just be there to say, I'm here if you need me, and leave it at that. Not for
Mhm.
you to take on the problem like as if it's your own and trying to fix it and all of that, or perhaps subjecting yourself to people, talking to you a certain kind of way or treating you a certain kind of way when all you're trying to do is help, but you allow them to do so because you say, well, they're just going through some stuff right now. They just dealing with some stuff, so I'm not going, so you now you start to strip away your boundaries. You start to strip
Mhm.
away, yeah, I'm coming alongside you,
Mhm.
and you might be going through, but that doesn't make it okay for you to treat me any old kind of way. That doesn't make it okay for you to use me as a doormat. If all I'm when I especially when I'm just trying to be here for you, because I know nobody else is trying to be here for you, and then this is how you do me. And if you're not careful, you'll begin to accept that as the norm, and you'll take that into adulthood. And
Mhm.
as you meet friends, you let your friends do you any old kind of way when they know that they'll never get that from you, but they are comfortable in imparting it to you.
To
And it's
you.
like, and after a while, you start to feel some kind of way about that. You start to, there's a resentment that builds in. That there's a frustration that comes in, and if you don't deal with it sooner rather than later, you will reach a point where you will just kind of pop,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
it'll come off wrong, and people will be so shocked. They'll be like, "Oh, I didn't know you felt that way, Misha. I've been
Yes.
feeling that way for a minute. I've been trying to be cool about it, but you keep pushing the envelope, keep pushing the envelope.
Yeah.
Just keep trying me." And I don't want to be there for you, but not at the expense of you mistreating or taking me for granted. And so
Mhm.
all of
Mhm.
those things come full circle. That if you get into that habit of doing those kind of things again earlier in childhood and you take it into adulthood, there has to come a point as we approach where we start talking about that subject of what is my next, because there is a next, and am I ready to even go into that next? Because as I go into that next, there's certain things that I got to do different. There's certain standards of excellence that I got to establish. There's certain boundaries that I got to put into place. I got to rid myself of that shy, quiet mode. Nothing wrong with me being low key and chill, but I can't do it at the expense of smothering my gift, or putting it or watering it down just to please other people or to seek their approval first before I act on it. So that's why I say everything that you just talked about in these first few moments of our time together, these again are not by accident. God has to take you through these phases and these moments to get you ready and prepared for what is ahead. And he will keep you in that holding pattern until you figure it out, until you're ready to kind of step out on that faith and not be worried about again what other folks think, but more so, am I doing it? Am I in alignment with what he has for me to do? And once I get to that place where I have a peace about it, where I have a calm about it, where I have a confidence about it, and I'm not concerned about what other people think. I'm not concerned about the likes and the follows and all of that. I'm just going to do it because it's the right thing to do, and it's what God created me uniquely to do. I'm the only one that's going to be able to do this the way that he has it designed for me to do it. And you can be with it or you cannot be with it. Guess what? Either way, I'm going to be okay because I'm no longer living for your approval, so to speak. And that's important as you go into that next, if you will. So I appreciate again you sharing that, because I not only for us but just for listeners that's tuning in, because a lot of people struggle with that and don't realize or fully understand, why am I feeling this way, why am I this is why. Oftentimes this is why. And
Mhm.
so that's why it's important for us to have those reflection moments and kind of piece it all together, so it
Mhm.
starts to make sense, the light bulbs start to come on, and you're like, okay, now that I understand it, now it's time for me to act and make that next move so I can walk boldly, unapologetically into my next, whatever
Mhm.
that is. And hopefully it's whatever that is what God has for you, not necessarily what you're trying to manufacture or mimic because you saw it on social media, or I'm trying to imitate what somebody else is doing across the street from me or in the workplace or anything like that. So again, I appreciate you sharing that.
Yes.
Um, so Misha, obviously you had an awesome childhood. Yeah, you had some challenges along the way, but for the most part, you don't have any real complaints about the childhood. But as you know, as we enter into adulthood, just like we just talked about earlier with our kids, there is that next moment, and in that next moment comes more experiences and more encounters. Some good, some that are going to take us to places and put us in situations that are going to be compromising and challenging and difficult to deal with to a certain extent. And the reality is, as I've said many times on this podcast, is that you live long enough, there's going to come a moment in time where you're going to face a storm in life, one of many that are to come, that you're going to get in that moment and you're going to be feeling like a sense of hopelessness, a sense of helplessness. It's going to be you in this storm, and you're going to be thinking to yourself, how am I going to get through this? This is a little heavier. This is a little deeper. This is a little bit more burdensome than what I'm accustomed to. Even if I'm normally good at pivoting and making those shifts and moves, this one is hitting a little different and I don't know what to do with it. So, with that said, tell us about a time that that's exactly how you were feeling. Like you were feeling locked in, shut down, didn't know what to do with it, had your fears, worries, doubts, anxieties as to, will I ever get out of this? Is this my end to my story? Obviously, you're here today, so we can trust God made a way, but maybe back then you weren't quite so sure about that. What
Yeah.
was that situation like for you, and what was ultimately the turning point when you began to see some light at the end of the tunnel and coming up out of it?
Okay, so I love the conversation about timing, um, and people pleasing. Timing so much timing because for someone who sees this or hears this, whatever it may be, and they're unsure about how long something is going to go on or how long they've been in a situation or whatnot, for them to know that the moment that you have that aha and you feel like something about this is off, like I need to, this situation isn't right for me, go with that. Go with that thought that maybe God has placed that thought in your mind. Like, hey, this is not for you. This whatever's going on with you is not for you. Get some help if you don't know what to do, if you don't know what your next turn should be or whatnot, if you're stuck in a place and you know something's coming up. You don't know what's coming, but you know something's coming and that you might not know how to get out of it. Talk to somebody. And so said all that to say my moment, most traumatic moment of all the things I've experienced was going through a foreclosure. The absolute worst. And I'm talking, I've lost a lot of people. So where I grew up, I've experienced, seeing people get killed, like right where I was. My best friend was killed. Several people I went to school with. I lost some family members, a lot of death. And so with that, I thought about just loss, period, the trauma of loss. So the trauma of losing the house, though, was greater than all of those. And I think that trauma was so big for me because having that house was like a dream. It was something that I had, it was always in the back of my mind, like, oh, I can't wait to, have this kind of house and do these things in my house and have this lifestyle in my house. And then when that came to fruition, it was like, this is it. Like, hey, nothing else ever has to happen. This is perfect. I could be here forever. This is great. And then when the moment started coming that, like, I knew that I was kind of in trouble and like, something's this is this going to work out, and what do I need to do? Part of that only child syndrome kicked in. That I don't know about you as an only child, but me as an only child, very to myself, really don't have people that I trust to talk to about anything. Everybody comes and talks to me about everything because I feel like people know as only children we don't gossip. Well, I don't gossip. There was never anybody to discuss things with. There's no brother or sister to go tell. It's just me in the house with my grown people. So who am I going to talk to your problem about? So as an only child, a lot of things for me were held in, kept quiet because, going back to childhood, I was the secret keeper. I knew all the stuff that was happening about everybody. So I've always held a secret. So even for myself, I'm the secret keeper. So, knowing to reach out and ask somebody, hey, what can I do here? Not being comfortable asking people to borrow money. How can I ask those people that? And on top of all of this, how is it possible that I'm going through a foreclosure and I'm a real estate agent? How is it possible? You can't have something wrong with your house and this is the business that you're in. Are you crazy? So all of that, that was the trauma. The loss of that home was the greatest trauma. And then afterward, knowing that that loss was not just for me, it wasn't just my loss. That loss also impacted my child because this house was a safe space for him. It was like a castle for him. He's a only child and growing up and pretends like I pretend. So that was his pretend space. And It was a loss for him. It was a loss for my neighbors. Like I mentioned, that growing up for me, we had a neighborhood and we're neighbors. And my neighbors took me to school and I stayed at their houses when my grandmother and mother couldn't, my mom couldn't pick me up from when they were working and couldn't pick me up or whatnot. I grew up in a neighborhood. So for me, wherever I am, I'm a neighbor. So in that place, I was the neighbor. Like the people called, I would take the people, somebody needs to go to work or whatever they need, or they need something from the store, help figuring out electronics. I'm the neighbor that you call. So then my neighbors also lost in us losing the house. I feel like I probably broke something for so many people. And it was a terrible moment to live through. Terrible moment.
Wow. Again, appreciate your transparency and sharing that. Anytime you experience a major financial loss,
Yeah.
it's very easy to equate it with, like I said, losing somebody losing their life that meant something to you or whatever. And I know some people might say, well, how can losing a life, be equated to a house? Should we be that attached to possessions or anything like that? It's not so much about the physical structure of the home itself. It was just that what it represented. It was,
Hmm.
like you said, it was something that you dreamed of. It was an accomplishment that you always hoped to make, and then here you were in this moment experiencing what you always wanted to experience, and then life happens, and now you're fighting to keep the very thing, one of the greatest accomplishments of life. You're now fighting to keep it, and on the verge of losing it all. And then on top of that, to add further insult to injury, I'm in the line of work that ties directly into the loss that I'm up against. So then you start to ask, of course, for those of you who are in relationship with God, you start to say, well, God, how did I get here? And then two, of all the losses that you could have had me go through, why this one? I mean, how is this going to impact me if somebody in my workspace finds out about this? Why would you? I'm the neighbor that people know. Are you going to really let them see me? Possibly have my things put out in the street, or all of a sudden I got a for sale sign up on the lot, and they had no idea that I was even looking to sell anything, and that it's actually the bank selling my property or anything like that. So the shame, and then again, as you stated, then I got a kid, and I'm thinking about, how is that going to impact him, and because this was his safe space, and so now I'm feeling like I've let down multitude of people. But again, it kind of goes back to what we talked about earlier. I'm worried about what other people are going to think, rather than taking a moment to say, okay, God, as traumatic as this is, if I am in the relationship with you that I tell people all the time that I have with you, and I say that I trust you and that I believe in you and I love you and all of that good stuff, then I know that even though this is hard, there's a reason behind it. And sometimes it's not even about that you made a mistake. You talked about sometimes when we're going into our next, sometimes you going into that next could be because you were in a space that you never had any business being in to begin with. But then sometimes it it wasn't that you were in a bad situation or a bad surrounding. It was just that your season in that space had now come to an end, and it was time again for you to go to the next. And God has a way of knowing that you have gotten so comfortable in your current, in your present, that in order for you to move, he has to allow circumstances to be such that forces you, if you will, to make that decision. So what better thing to do? And I say better, I use that loosely, but if you were no longer meant to be in that home that you were in, and God already knew that because Misha's a little stubborn, Misha is a little comfortable and set in her ways, I have to create a situation that makes it uncomfortable. And if uncomfortable means her possibly having to lose this home, then I'm willing to make that happen because I know what I have for her, and she's going to realize, and I'm sure, and I'm curious to hear you speak to that. She's going to understand that this is not the end. In fact, she's going to discover that what I have after this, in the next, she's gonna it's gonna come to a point where, yeah, she's gonna reflect back that this happened, but it's not going to it's not going to hit her in the same way that it is hitting her in the moment. The shame, the embarrassment, the hurt, the disappointment, it's not going to feel the same later when she sees what I have for her. But I have to make it uncomfortable for her to move on to the next. He does that with us in job situations. Some of us have been working that 9 to 5. We making that good money, good benefits. We've accomplished many plateaus and levels and accomplishments, but God has decided, you know what, you're supposed to be doing your own thing, and you done got too comfortable in this job. So I need to make the job uncomfortable so that it's no longer something that you are just relaxed and settled in, but that you're ready to now take that leap into where I have you going. Yes, there are some uncertainties. Yes, there are some unknowns, as I'm sure you experienced when this foreclosure took place. Like, now where we gonna go? Are we gonna be completely out, or do I am I going to be able to find a place in between? Will I ever find something as nice as this one, or perhaps better? What does that look like? And again, I'd like to hear the backside of that. When you were in that moment, foreclosure is real, it's going to happen. What was the turning point in that situation that lets you know, despite what it looks like, we're going to be all right? In fact, we're not just going to be all right. There's going to be a day where we're going to look back on this and be like, you know what, this was tough, but I'm glad I went through it because of where it took me to. What was that for you in this situation?
So I can say today that I still miss that house. I'm always real about that. My son and I, we talk about that. Like, we loved that building. We loved that setup of that house. But I will say this to whomever may be listening, that there is a next, and leaving that house probably saved us from some things and set us up for some things. Okay. So, like, my son had a teacher who would tell him he didn't want him to go to a certain school for middle school, and high school, because he knew he was a teacher who knew my son's personality, and he knew his capabilities and where he could go in life. And he knew that the school that he would have gone to had we been in that house would never have fed him what he needed. So us leaving that house set my son up on the trajectory of what he'll do, in his future, and what he's going to do for college now, probably for his career. That would not have happened there. A relationship that I was in at that time was definitely something that I needed to be separated from. And I tell people this about praying. And if you pray and you're serious about your prayers, and God knows you're serious about your prayers, when you speak something, sometimes God will make a move so fast and it'll make your head spin, because you think you're prepared for what you're asking him to do, but you're really not prepared. So in those moments in life where I ask God, can you please remove this person from my life? Because I've done that on several occasions where I knew, I was trying to break away from, whomever it was or whatever the situation was, but that whatever I was doing was obviously not strong enough. My human strength against another human being was not strong enough. And in the time that we're living in the US right now, I very much believe the Bible verse that says, "For we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, powers, and in high spaces." And I'm paraphrasing that or whatnot, but that whole point about it not necessarily being the person that's standing in front of you that you're wrestling with. It's a mindset. It's some war that's being waged that you might not even know what that war is. And so part of that moving out of that house, I really believe, was a protection for myself and for my son. So, that was those were things that I had to just kind of keep in mind as I was going through that. And like I said about it being a loss, I don't remember what I was reading one time, but they said that living, we will experience a lot of mini deaths, and that a death does not have to be the death of a person, somebody physically dying. A death is the end of whatever that thing is that really meant something to you. So, be it a relationship, be it a career, be it a house, I don't, whatever that thing is that you had an attachment and a bond to, and that the tie was severed and it's done. those are deaths that we experience, and you feel that. That's that sorrow that this thing has ended over and over again. So losing that house, it was a death for me. Um, and the timing on it. So everybody's different. I know people who've lost lots of things, people who lose houses, and they come to you the next day and ask me, hey, we got put out of our house. We need you to help us find something. And I'm like, okay, because that's what experience in life gives you, is a place that you can no longer judge people, because now you've experienced that thing. So there's no place for you to judge. And it helps me be a person who stopped judging people anyway, whether I'd gone through what they went through or not. It helps me to say life is life, and no matter what an experience is a person is having, this is just life, and everybody's going through something. And whether you think it's the worst thing that they could do, or you minimize it, everybody's going through something. So some people get over it really quickly. They move on, and it's nothing to them. But for me, that loss was, again, probably the heaviest loss of my life, and it took me years. Like I don't discuss it to this day. You and I are probably we might be the third people that I'm discussing it with, because it was that heavy to me. Um, so now I can talk about it because of the experience that I went through. There is a next. So if somebody is going through, I can tell them, hey, you need to contact your mortgage company first and ask them, can they make these type of adjustments for you? Or you need to contact this program that helps people when they're going through a foreclosure. Or, hey, we can put your house on the market to try to sell your house before you actually are in foreclosure and they take the house. Or, hey, you need to do this before the foreclosure happens so you can already have somewhere to go. So because I've had the experience, now I can talk to people about the experience and get them prepared. And the craziest thing is that even going through the process, it never stopped me from being a great agent for other people. So there was never a jealous moment. I never go and take my clients to see or to sell a house. And in my mind, it's like, this should be me. I should have this house or something like that. Never felt like that, because that house was the house for me. Everything else now, every other houses now it's just four walls and with the, different configuration on the inside for floor plans. But I'm happy for people because they're getting that experience. Um, and I know that at some point, if I decide I want to have another home, that I can go and I know the process to get another home. But right now, it's really been a Jesus moment. So that's probably Jesus is probably what got me through a lot of stuff, because, like, seriously, I sit and I reflect on Jesus's life. What possessions did Jesus have? Nothing. Jesus had probably his, what do they call the outfit? A sarah. He probably had his outfit and his shoes. As he took his shoes and his clothes and his sandals wherever he was going. He didn't own anything. He was, where do I need to be? Who do I need to help right now? Cool. What am I going to eat today? What are these people serving? Where I'm going? Cool. And that's how he moved through his life. So that was very helpful to me to know that my existence here on this earth is not tied to a building, which is what you said earlier. It is really, who is it that I can help through what I've experienced, and just to keep it pushing from there.
That's I love that. I love that, and you hit some very key points in explaining the backside of this. Like you said, when you're going through a storm, and I hope our listeners are understanding this. When you're going through a storm, it's very easy in the flesh of it all to make it about you. Look what I'm losing. Why is this happening to me? It's not fair. It's not right. All the things that I do for other people, I'm there for this, I'm there for that. Why would you, whether you're blaming God or whether you're just blaming the economy, you're blaming the folks that around you, like this is just wrong. And it should be, there's so many other people that this happened to that are not nearly as, responsible or nearly as, concerned about other people. But yet here it is for me. And what I had to come to a realization about, and I've shared this with other people, is that, you have to understand that the storms of life that you go through, many times it was never even about you to begin with. You were just selected by God to go through it so that you could be in position to pour into other people and be relatable to the people that he's setting you up to be pouring into. Because as you just shared, had I not gone through this, then I wouldn't be able to, properly deal or interact with the person that comes to me and says, I just had a foreclosure or some other situation that's happened in life and my credit is shot or my money is low, but I still need a place to stay and I would love for it to be a home. What can you do for me? When you're in an industry that, is, oftentimes profit driven, like selling homes or selling cars or whatever, especially if you're good at it, you can get caught up in the commission checks and all of that, and you lose sight of the people. You can get caught up to the degree that just to make the sale happen, I'll say whatever I need to say to get you to sign on that dotted line. But God says, no, it's not about the stuff. It's not about, how successful you are. I want to make sure that if this is going to be the lane that you're in terms of profession wise, that you do it from a godly perspective, that you're not just interested in selling a person a house, you're interested in providing them a home to live in, some place that they can not only reside in, but something that they could actually afford. Because that's even part of that is a big part of the process. Yeah, I know what you can get approved for, but this is what would ideally fit based upon your budgetary needs and things of that nature. I experienced that when I was in the car business. People would come in, and I've worked at dealerships in the past as a finance manager when they would come in and say, oh, I'm interested in that Lexus on the lot. And then I look at their profile and I'm going, okay, so what you're interested in is a large 4-door sedan. Let me help you out with that. I think I can get you a large 4-door. Well, I like that Lexus. I know, I do too. But I do have a large 4-door sedan that will meet your needs, and so it's kind of redirecting, understanding where they are, not looking at them any kind of way, but helping them, meeting them where they are, but helping them get to where they need to get to. And if they do still desire that upper echelon, in your case, that upper echelon house that currently is outside of their realm of understanding. I even caught a clip of yours where you talked about different programs that are available. And oh, by the way, this is the credit score requirement for that. So don't get caught up and get happy thinking that every message out there is for you. If you don't meet this criteria, we need to go a different direction. But nevertheless, it allows you to be that honest, transparent person in your business dealings. And so I think, when I think about why would God have you go through this, is because he knew you were in a space that there is clearly a need. People need a place to live. But he wanted to make you be different. He wanted you to stand out amongst realtors, that when they have the Mesia experience as a realtor, it's not just somebody that's trying to throw me into something knowing that the house is going to fall down and raggedy. It's not just somebody that's just looking to get a commission check, but she's actually genuinely concerned to match me up with the right fit, making sure that the financing is in order so that when I sign all of those 20,000 pages that they make you sign when you're getting a mortgage, you feel like you don't feel like immediately that you have a buyer's remorse, but that you made the right decision and you had somebody that guided you along the way that genuinely had your best interests and needs at heart. That allows you to go home at night to whatever home you're in and sleep peacefully, knowing that I just didn't juke somebody today. I didn't just, give somebody a couple of lines and made that check off of them today, but I actually did right by them. And because I do right by them, because that's my ethical approach to it all, God makes sure that that I prosper financially. He makes sure the checks still come in, but I do it in a manner that is decent and in order. And then, as you shared earlier too, being out of that house, I love that house. It was it was laid out just so. But again, sometimes when we get a little too attached to the stuff, to the junk, to the things, God sees that and he sees the warning flags to that. I know it's a beautiful home. I'm the one who allowed you to get that home, but you were getting a little too comfortable with it. And I see the bigger picture. I can see beyond what you can see. So I see an opportunity for your son to be aligned with a better school. I see an opportunity for you to remove yourself from a relationship that may not be suited for you to be in. I see you again becoming a next level realtor. You were already good at what you did, but I'm getting ready to level you up in that. So I need to remove this asset. I need to remove this physical structure that you just love so much. And I need you to remind you that all you need is me. You talked about what Jesus walked around in, and he didn't own stuff. He wasn't rolling, in some fancy transportation or fancy clothes. He was just him. And this process helps to mature you and develop you spiritually to the point where you say, you know what, it's not, I'm still human, so I do like the fancy homes and cars and clothes and all that kind of stuff, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I'm not so attached to it to where, if it was taken away from me today, that I'd feel some kind of way about it. That instead I'm looking at it from the perspective, okay, Lord, if you decided this house is no longer mine to have, or this car is no longer mine to have, or whatever, yeah, it was cool. I wish I could keep it, but I understand how you move. So if you're moving this out of the way, then now instead of me being disappointed, I now have shifted to become excited in those moments because you got something in store for me. And so now all I need to do is kind of be still, keep my mind and heart open to what it is that you need me to do, because I'm excited for what you got planned for me. And that's again, for my listeners, that's a sign of spiritual growth when you get to that point where loss is looked at differently, even losing loved ones. If you know that that loved one had a relationship with Christ and they pass away, yes, I'm gonna miss them. They were my this or that to me, whatever that relative or friendship we had or what have you. But if I know that they had a relationship with God, and God has called them home, they actually are better off than all of us right now. I'm okay with it. I'm gonna miss them. It's sad to see them go, but at least I know that they're okay. I know what the next, even in death, I know what the next is going to look like for them, and I look forward to the opportunity when my time comes to be reunited with them in that same next. It's just you look at the quote unquote losses differently, because now I'm not looking at it through worldly lenses. I'm looking at it through godly lenses, and that just helps you to brings a whole new peace, a whole new calm, a whole new joy in what otherwise the world would say or classify as, oh no, this is over for you. You ain't never gonna get no house again. You done had a foreclosure. That's, you know how long that's gonna be on your credit. It's gonna, you'll never. No, because the God I serve is bigger than that. And even with what you said, I will never have again, He's going to make sure that I have that again. In fact, He can make it be better than the one I had before. That's not for you to say. That's not for you to make that call, because this was not your move. This was not your decision. It was His. And I'm accepting it because of who He is and the relationship that I have with Him. So, again, I appreciate you sharing those things, because these are key things that people can apply, whether it's a foreclosure moment or it's some other thing that's happened. I lost my job today. Unfortunate. I don't know how I'm gonna pay my bills. I get that. But if you know who God is and you got that relationship with Him, do you think that He would let you lose that job and not already have something set up for you to make sure that you're gonna be all right? He's not gonna just have you lose a job and just be out here starving and homeless and all of that. That's just not how He does. He don't move like that. So again, for my listeners, please understand. Take Misha's story and apply it to your respective situations, because the same thing can happen to you. You can recover from what the world would call a loss, if you understand that God moves like that, and He will bless and do it at levels that are beyond your imagination. And you'll look back at these dark seasons of life and be like, you know what? It was worth it for me to go through that, even though it was tough, even though it was challenging. So appreciate you sharing that. So Misha, when you obviously you shared some very traumatic things, hey, losing a foreclosure, losing the home, and that can be tough, obviously. But as something like that could be a major encounter in life that we go through. Sometimes life is just life, and it could be a series of just random things that take place that kind of disrupt our day, throw us off track a bit or what have you. So with that said, when you do find yourself going through whatever it is that you're dealing with, the big stuff or just life and type stuff, what is it that works best for you to kind of help you keep a solid focus and keep your head right and mind right as you're processing and working through that thing? What does that regimen or that routine look like for you?
So I'm a very I was gonna say inner critic, which is big. I beat myself up more than I ever need anybody else to beat me up. So I spend a lot of time like journaling. I do a lot of reading, so a lot of self help, self development, and all of that is just who I've been again all my life. I'm always trying to figure out like how to help people. And part of helping people is to know yourself, so that I can share that information with the next person about knowing themselves so that they're able to See, again, I talked about people being able to recognize when something isn't going the way it should go. So I spend a lot of time, again, reading Bibles. I do a daily devotional every day, like every day. At some point, I'm going to do the devotional and read the Bible. And I tie the Bible into just our everyday living so that whether I'm talking to somebody who, believes in the believes in the religion that I believe in, or I could talk to an atheist and tell them, hey, don't look at the Bible as religion. Look at the Bible as a practical guide to how to live life. Because that's really what it is. It's just a guide to living life. Don't associate with these kind of people. You need to get some rest every day. If you plant your garden at this time of the year, you'll have a harvest. If that's it. It's a practical guide. You can take all the religion out or make the religious part about religion is just doing something on a consistent basis. So if you take those things that are in that Bible and you apply them to your daily life and be consistent in them, it's usually going to get you where it is you want to go. So those are the main things for me are, again, my Bible and then whatever it is I'm reading. So what am I reading now? I'm reading several books. So I just finished a book called Notes on Being a Man because I'm raising a male child. And I know that I'm not a man. So there are some things that he's going to experience that I will never experience. So I do a lot of reading to, kind of have an idea of what he's about to enter as he's leaving the house, right? Um, to that, I would say if someone is trying to figure out how to move forward or how to get a grasp on some of the things that are happening in their lives, don't be like me and stay by yourself and in your shell and hide out and try to figure things out on your own. There's a reason that God put us here on the earth with other people. There's a reason that people experience things like I talked about my experience, and now I know what to do. He put us here together so that we could share with each other, so that we could talk about these situations and not be alone. So I would say, find your circle. If I could go back and think about what is something that I've needed for a long time is a good circle of people. So whatever that the saying is, the five people closest to you are an indication of where you are or where you're going in your life. The other day I sat and I was writing down, like, who are my five people? And I only got four people. And I counted that based on who are the people that I interact with every day or on a very consistent basis, and where are they in their lives. So for anybody that's watching or listening, I would say maybe, do that. Sit down and figure out who are these five people and have a place, have a goal set for your life or several goals set for your life. Where is it that you want to go? And then look at your circle of people and say, hey, are these people able to help me on this journey of getting to where it is I'm trying to go? So those are the things right now. I really need to work on my circle of people, and again, come out of the hiding and just be okay with just this is life. Just be okay with, hey, this is where you are. This is where you want to go. Here are the steps to get there. So yeah, that's about it. That's how I kind of deal with it. And the other thing I would say is being reflective on your childhood, because we hear about that a lot. Like people say, people are always blaming their parents for where they are in life or whatnot. Well, your parents, guardians, community, whatever it is that you saw as a kid is very much a part of who you become as an adult. And so in order to help yourself, and I'll give an example. For me, probably this is a few months ago. Now I'm in my 40s, so this memory is like a 40-year-old memory. My dad went to prison when I was probably 2. And so I hadn't thought about this my whole life. Like I hadn't thought about this in all these 40 years. It never came up to me about my dad's presence or him not being present. I hadn't really sat and thought through that, right? Which is why people go to counseling, because counseling will also help you through some of these things. Your mental health is more important than any of this other stuff that's happening in life. If nobody tells you that job that you go to every day that you hate so much, but you keep going because it's making money, but you're unhappy. We see people every day that are taking their lives because they are genuinely unhappy. Like you can have all the money in the world, but it doesn't mean a thing if you're not happy with it. So get you some mental help, find somebody to talk to, and then be honest about what it is that you're talking about, and giving out that what you're holding in. So back to what I figured out was, my dad went to prison, and so I would see him, like we would go visit him. My dad was a writer, so he would write me these beautiful letters, and he would tell me he loved me at the end of every letter. I could pull out a letter or card from him right now, always sign, love your dad, or I love you daddy, or whatever. But again, we did not grow up in the household together. So his love on paper was not his love in presence, right? So my brain didn't really, I don't think I ever really understood about his love. Well, a couple of months ago, I was looking at a picture from my first birthday party. And I've seen this picture all for years. For I've had the picture, since I was a kid or whatever. So I see the picture all the time. But at this point of life, because we talked about time a couple of times during our conversation, at this part of my life, I looked at that picture and my eyes are different now. So those shells that were on about whatever, those shells have fallen off. So when I saw that picture this time, I was like, huh, my dad is holding me at my first birthday party. Like, that's my dad holding me with my cake right there and everybody standing around. It's not my mom holding me. It's not my grandmother, who are the two people primarily who raised me. That was my dad holding me in that picture. And it was like a light bulb went off, and that light bulb said, Misha, your dad loved you. And I was like, what? And then I stopped and I thought about a few times that I talked to my dad, and he told me a couple of stories about my childhood. Because again, he only had 2 years where he was present with me as my caretaker. But he told me these couple of stories and he laughed. He has this, my smile is my dad's smile. So he laughed and he was just, so gleeful. And again, seeing that picture that day, it was like, your dad would have been a great dad. He would have been phenomenal at being your dad. He would have loved you. So, said that to say, for people, take some time to reflect on the parts of your life that may be impacting you, something that happened way back when, and kind of get that, be able to break that down. I do a lot of this for me because my degree is in psychology. So all I do is sit and look at people and try to understand situations, similar to what you said about the car. So somebody comes in and they have this eye on this Lexus, probably because they've seen somebody else with the Lexus. It's the name because that's what's popular. It's the Lexus. But what you really need is a car of this size that can get you from point A to point B, and it's affordable. The same thing with our childhood is being able to see what is it that you really need in that moment. I needed to know that my dad loved me, that he loved me. So that being able to be reflective and have those moments where I stop and think about something that happened that was 40 years ago, y'all. That picture was taken, and all the 40 years that I've had that picture, it wasn't until that moment that I saw that picture with those different eyes and was like, oh, right. And so that set up some things for me being able to move forward in how I deal with relationships. And Dads are always important to me, though. Like, I look at men, and like I mentioned with your daughter, how it's going to feel for you, for her to go to college, because you're a man, and a man, not a male, a man has this protect, provide, and to know that she's going to be somewhere where you can't get right there to her. I'm in awe of men who stand up, and especially fathers who are there in the stead and guiding and leading. So yeah, so that moment for me, seeing that picture for my dad, was just like, Kenny, it's unexplainable, big deal.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. I think one of the takeaways from what you just said is the importance as you're dealing with challenges of life. And everybody, there's no one set fixed way of doing it. But one thing that I will say about your approach is the fact that you clearly are not waiting until a situation arises before you prepare for it. You basically are getting up each and every day, putting on that full armor of God, because you take time out to be in devotion, to read your word, to get into prayer. This is a part of the process that when you're in a relationship with God, you have to understand it's necessary to do, because you just don't know what today is going to bring. You don't even know if today is going to be your last day. And so with that said, you want to make sure that I have prepared myself in such a way that no matter what happens, even if this is the last morning that I get up, in my right mind, standing upright, if this is it, did I give honor to that day by first starting it off with spending time with him, so that I'm ready to take on whatever it is that's going to come my way today. And if something does come your way, it may rattle you, it may shake you, it may knock you to the side a little bit. But what it won't do is it won't take you out. It won't be something that's so heavy, so big that you can't make it through. It'll just, again, it may cause a little rumble, a little stumble, but I'm gonna be all right because I'm
Mhm.
already prayed up. I'm already locked and loaded. I already know who I can call on to make sure that everything, works out. You talked about your earthly dad and although he only had a couple of years with you in your upbringing, just how special and how valuable you reflected on that just by looking at the picture a little bit different than you had after all of these years. But, you know, while God has that earthly father for you, he is your heavenly father. And again, he can fill in the gap when the earthly dad does not do so for whatever the reason is. He's there for you. He can do it for you. And so I appreciate you, making reference to that. And I also like the fact, which is clearly another topic for another day very easily. I actually talk about it in my book when you talked about the dynamic of mother and son, because that's a real conversation. Even when the mom and the son are close, the reality is that no matter how much she tries, no matter how hard she works to provide, to pour into, to give, there's just certain things that because you're mom, you can't do for son that because you're not a man.
Mhm.
But you recognize the fact that you're raising a young man. And so I love that you take time out to, whether it's reading a book, whether it's trying to get insights on in whatever way that you can, of course, in a positive light, that you can not only better understand your son, but to be able to speak to him in a way that only you can do within the capacity that you're in as a woman, as his mother, to speak to him, to let him know that you're there to support him, that you're there to encourage and uplift him, but you're not trying to be dad, because I can't be. And being okay with that. You can't be his dad. And you want to, and again, I talk about that in my book, about the different phases of how moms take on roles, which again, all well intended, but, sometimes in the spirit of being protective and covering, you may step into a lane that's just not yours to step into. And again, that's where you can call upon God and say, okay, Lord, dad's not around for my son. But you can perhaps connect me with men who will pour into my son, come alongside him in a way that is safe, that is uplifting, that is encouraging, that is empowering, that I feel comfortable with my son being around this man because he is of a right standing. His intentions are right. He's not just trying to hang out with my son because he can hang out with me. He genuinely has my son's best interest at heart. Send me those type of men wherever they may be, whether it's a man in the classroom that's teaching him, whether it's a man in the church that he encounters, whether it's a man at a local community organization or some sport that he participates in or whatever that is. Surround him with those men who have been specifically designed and created to come alongside young men who are not necessarily their biological sons, but will treat them like their sons, who will impart in them and pour into them like their sons. And so that's how you navigate that. And again, this is easily a conversation for another day that I might even have to bring you back on for that, because that's a big topic. And I talked about many personal things in my book about, as close as I was with my own mother, sometimes mom just couldn't, it just wasn't your lane to do. But I still needed the support. I still needed the help. And so that can be a challenging dynamic, but I appreciate you bringing that up because I'm sure we're going to have some moms that are raising sons that tune into this broadcast and they're struggling. That might be their struggle right now. How do I connect and identify with him? How do I protect him without babying him? How do I teach him what he needs to know without holding his hand all the way and not allowing him to have that freedom and to kind of do his thing? We talked about that at the very top of the show about you're at that transition point where I gotta realize that he's leaving the nest and I gotta be okay with him leaving it and knowing that I did everything I could as his mother to give him what he needed to be okay when he's no longer in my immediate reach and my immediate sight. So it's the same concept. So all of what you just spoke to, very powerful, very necessary, very important as we discuss how do we deal with our challenges and storms of life. So again, appreciate you sharing that. Misha, if you and you kind of tapped into what I'm getting ready to ask you, but if you could sit across the table right now and talk to younger Misha, Misha who went through a foreclosure and felt some kind of way about that, Misha who, perhaps had to deal with being a single mom, Misha who, just didn't necessarily even know what her purpose was in life. If you could speak to her, impart some words of wisdom into her, some things that you wish she would have known that you know now that would have helped her navigate life a little bit smoother, a little bit easier, with a little bit better perspective. What would you say to her, as well as to any of our listeners that are tuning in that are just looking for just a little snippet of words of encouragement on how they can take those first steps in overcoming whatever storm or burden that they find themselves up against, but not quite sure, not quite certain how to navigate to move forward into their next that God has for them? What would you say to them, and what would you say to younger Misha?
Wow. Well, to younger Misha, you see, I have to look down so I can get in my go back and see what I needed to know at that time. Um, I would say that you follow your heart. That's to follow your heart. Whatever it is that God has given you that is to do, and I'll here's another Bible verse. I think it's a Bible verse. Um, it's it's something. It says God will give us the desires of our heart, and you guys can you can go look up the Bible verse, okay? Or you can put it in the you can put it in your caption when you share the video. So it says something to the effect of God will give you the desires of your heart. And as I've heard people explain it, people say it like whatever you ask God for in prayer, if you're, if you're faithful in your prayer or whatnot, God will give you that thing. So if I pray, God, I love that Lexus, and that Lexus has been on my mind forever, and I'll look good in that car, and I'll take care of, and I'll go to church every Sunday, do everything you told me to do. If you give me that Lexus, please, God will give you the desire of your heart. And so that's not the way that I interpreted that verse. I interpreted that verse as the things that God wants you to do in your life to fulfill your purpose so that you will walk this earth, and the things that he's already laid out for everybody to do, that God has those things and he places those in your heart. God will give you the desires. So then the stuff that you're wanting, if it's aligned, that is something that God has probably placed in your heart. And that's the way I see that verse. So the thing that you desire, that you wake up every day and you're like, I really want to do that. You feel good about going forward with that thing. I would say know what that is. And whatever it is, walk in that. And do not let the people that are around you try to deter you from that thing, because people will give you their fear because that's what they know. And we're coming from, a lot of us, generations of fear, because there were just places we couldn't go. There were things we couldn't say. There were things we could not own, and so forth and so on. So people pass down those fears to us. That's what generational curses are. There's somebody saying, we can't do that. If I couldn't do it, you can't do that. That's not true. You couldn't do it, or you didn't have the faith to move forward and know that God was going to back you up in that thing. So whatever that thing is that you have in your heart that you can't let go of, do that thing. And to what I said earlier about having a circle of people, whatever that thing is that you want to do, if you know that your people don't know how to help you get that thing accomplished, they don't know how to help you on that journey, you can love your people, but you need the people who can get you where you're going to go. So find some people that are either already where you're planning to go, so they've already walked that journey, they know that path, and they can guide you on it. Or find the people who have the resources to get you to that place, like they know somebody that knows somebody or whatever it is. So yeah, so that's one thing. And then the other thing is, probably my final thing is associated with where we are right now with our children graduating. I'm a starter. So, whatever it is in life, if something that needs to be done, I'm the person that you call when you get your ideas together. What is it you're planning to do? Okay, let me help you lay out a path for what you're planning to do. And what I've had to learn to do is also to be a finisher. I've had to learn to be okay with things ending because things have to end. So, this is just a perfect point in life for me that my desire for most of my life was to have a kid. I wanted to get married, but getting married wasn't top of mind. But having a kid was always top of mind. I always knew I wanted to be a mother, and so I know that I won't ever stop being a mother. But I'm happy that we're at this point where he can go and live his life because I know that there's a life for him that he would never get to experience being here with me. So this is just a perfect place for me to now do the thing that I'm mentioning to you, figure out what it is that you want in your life that you desire and find the people who can help you on that path and go. And so part of that for me is probably going to be a park ranger in a national forest.
Wow. Okay. Um, Park Ranger Misha. Um, I like the ring of that. I wouldn't have thought of that, but it wasn't for me to think of that. If that's what's on your heart to do, and that's the vision that God has placed in you, then by all means go for it. I think that would be phenomenal to do. Everything that you said here. In this segment, I mean, it's definitely critical, definitely important about letting go of that fear, breaking those cycles, those generational curses, if you will, and just even stepping out of. For some of us, it has to do with breaking out of being comfortable with just surviving and then transitioning into thriving. Sometimes we hinder our growth because we come from, again, childhoods and experiences where it was all about, living for today. It was all about, again, surviving. That was what's most important. And even when you shared earlier about, how you handled money and just the way you thought about certain things, it was like, I can say it for myself. My mom, I'm good at stretching some money. I'm good at, like you say, how to make $1 out of 15 cents. I can do that very well. And I owe all the credit to my mother for that. She taught me how to have a little and make a lot out of it. And I'm glad that that skill was imparted in me. If I had a regret, if I had something that I wish was better, I wish we would have had more conversations about how to take that little and invest it and expand it. And the conversations about things like savings and credit and all of those good things, because by the time all of that started to make sense to me and matter to me, I had made decisions that probably I either should have not made at all, or I should have perhaps the timing of it or the manner in which I went about it would have been different if I could rewind the clock. And so that applies not only in finances, but it just applies in all aspects of life. And so it's good to hear you acknowledge the fact that, hey, I'm in a good space right now. Some big things are happening in my life. Some big things are happening in my son's life. And I'm okay with that because he has an opportunity to spread his wings and do his thing. But guess what? As much as I love him and I want nothing but the best for him, it's also an opportunity for me to do a little spreading of my wings, whether it's become the park ranger or whether it's to write a book, whether it's to do whatever it is that you've been dreaming about that perhaps maybe you've even put on hold just to wait for this moment of season of life to get past you so that now that I don't have the day-to-day responsibility of mom, even though I'm going to always be a mom, I can now have the freedom, now have the time, now to have the availability to step into that next. That next doesn't just have to apply to everybody else. There's a next for me as well. And so again, appreciate you breaking it down like that because it's important for our listeners to understand that even as you reflected back on talking to younger Misha, we're not even suggesting that you wish per se that things didn't happen or that you didn't go through stuff. You were supposed to go through it. It's more about would I have navigated a little bit differently because of the way I see things now. I needed to go through it, but as we all know, there's some challenges, some storms that we've gone through that probably lasted a little bit longer than they had to. But because we were trying to do it our way and on our terms versus the way God was trying to direct us, yeah, we made things worse than what they needed to be. We stayed in it longer than we needed to stay. But again, it's all about the spiritual growth and maturity. And you get to the point where, you know what? I get it now. There's some things that I probably could have done differently, and as a parent, you hope to impart that same line of thinking into your to your children, so that they can understanding that they're going to bump their heads and make some mistakes too. You're just really hoping that they don't have to make as many as we did in order to get to where they're trying to get to. That's a success in itself. So again, love that you presented it like that. Um, Misha, this has been a phenomenal conversation with you. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. So much nuggets that you've dropped tonight in your sharing of your story, blessing me, blessing my listeners. Truly do appreciate it. Know that you're more than welcome to come back on the podcast at any time. It's been a pleasure hanging out with you and finally meeting you. So I'm so glad that we were able to make the connection and make this happen. No regrets whatsoever. So I'm thankful for you and how God is working through you and in all phases and aspects of your life and just excited what he has in store for you moving forward. So again, appreciate you so much for that. But as is customary here on the Blessings in the Streets podcast, we do want to take out an opportunity to show you some love, to lift you up, to celebrate you. And so, with that said, if you got anything that's going on now, coming up down the road, exciting adventures, projects, anything of that nature, we want to know all about it, how people can stay connected with you, follow along your journey, support it in any kind of way. And like I said, if nothing more, just keeping you lifted in prayer as God is navigating you through walking your purpose and living life to the fullest. So, what do we need to know about Mesia D that's happening that we need to just stay in tune and locked in for it and you get ready to celebrate now for what's getting ready to happen? What you got going on, Misha?
I love that. I love the way you create this space for us, and that you're so encouraging, and it feels like I can do anything at this point. So writing the book, I'm definitely going to write the book because my grandmother would always tell me, I'm going to write this book. I'm going to write this book. And she, all the time, she would say that because she really had a story. And so I know that she never wrote that book because of something you mentioned earlier. You talked about people pleasing and seeking approval. And I know a lot of life for people is about making sure that they look like a certain thing. And I'm just praying to get out of that. I don't want to look like anything except for what I am. So I'm gonna write that book, and the celebration is just this kid graduating, and just God help us to navigate these scholarships and whatever else he needs to get him where it is that he needs to go. So that I can go into whatever my next thing is. I don't know. I wish I had something so that people could like for real estate. You can definitely call me for real estate in North Texas. So kind of to what you said, I help people in all price points. So one of my clients that I still talk to today, I helped him purchase a house out near I say Palo Pinto Mineral Wells. Shout out to Palo Pinto State Park because the park opens officially on March 1st. I love to be outside, and so my plan is to go there to that park and spend the day, and then go to see my client because he was very instrumental in some things. So price point, one of the lowest price houses I've ever sold was to my client, and that was the house that was 2 hours away. So it doesn't matter where if you're buying the most expensive house or the least expensive, I'm happy to help. And that's my last thing. What I love to tag when I post stuff online is just keep swimming, and I think that's from the movie Finding Nemo. Is she just constantly said just keep swimming? So no matter what you're going through, no matter how difficult this moment seems, because it's only a moment, it does not last forever. Whatever that thing is that you're going through, just keep swimming. There is a next. Just keep swimming. There's a next. Just remind yourself that. Just keep swimming. So I tell myself that all the time when something's happening. Just keep swimming. Just keep swimming. I can't even swim well. That's it.
her expertise, her knowledge on this. She's clearly let you know that she's more than willing to help. She has a genuine heart and doing it for the right reasons. She still got to get paid. Let's not get it confused. But she's there looking out for you and what's best for you. So if you're in the area, or if you have some family or friends in the area that are looking for a realtor, because that can sometimes be sketchy and not knowing who's the right fit. I think we've had enough in the brief time that we've had this evening to show you what kind of person she is, and the heart that she has and what she does is genuine, is authentic, it's transparent, it's to the point, keeping it real, it's honest, which is all the things that you want when you're making such a major decision in life, even if you've gone through situations like a foreclosure or something of that nature, some other financial travesty has taken place in life and had you thinking that there was no way to bounce back from that. I'm sure she can help you in that regard, or direct you to who you need to link up with in order to get things back in order so you can be ready to do what you need to do to once again be in a homeowner. So please do touch base with her, connect with her, be of support to her. And even if you're not in the market right now for homes or anything of that like, keep her lifted up in your prayers. It's not an easy job that she does. And I'm not just talking about being a realtor. I'm talking about being a mom with a son that's about to graduate from high school. We've already kind of, told you earlier about the challenges that we're dealing with as parents, trying to get them ready and get their minds right, and the bumping of the heads that we're going through because they think they're grown and they know everything and they don't. All of that kind of stuff, on top of the money piece of it all. So yeah, we need your prayers on that. Keep Misha lifted up. Keep her son lifted up. Keep him locked in and focused. If you had a chance, I've never personally met him, but I did have a chance to, like I said, catch a glimpse of him on social media. And yeah, I see he loves to sing. I see he loves the Lord. So he's already, most of the battle that is to be won is already there. He's already foundationally intact. Now it's just time to get locked in on school, get that degree, and begin to live life and do his thing, and find out what his purpose is in life. So again, clearly you've done a phenomenal job as mom, and we applaud you for that. And I'm excited for whatever it is that God has for your son as well. And may his covering be on the both of you, blessing you with abundance, and just, again, just opening up doors. We're going to claim the victory on this book that's being written. We don't have the exact date yet, but we're going to already claim that the book is done, that is written. So we'll be looking forward to that when you announce that it's coming out. Here it is, and with your name on it and all of that. And just as a sidebar, I thought it was pretty cool when you talked about your grandmother wanting to write a book, because my own adventure in writing a book, it stemmed from my mother wanting to write a book, and as your grandmother had her situation, never got to write the book. And so my first book ended up being the book that my mother never got a chance to write. And then that's a whole nother story and journey in itself, just understanding that sometimes even in a scenario like that, God can place the vision in the heart of one person, but the assignment, the actual carrying out of the task, may actually be for somebody else to do. And that's how it lined up for me. You may have a very same situation. And the fact you told me 2 years that you had a chance to spend with your dad, but one of the things that you mentioned, my daddy was a writer. I got my daddy's smile. There, we can all sit back and put on our judgmental hats and criticize. Well, your dad wasn't there for you. He was, he was in jail. He was this and that. He gave you something you recognize after all these years. My daddy loved me, and there was still, even in his short time with me, he gave me some things that nobody can't take away from me. Nobody can't take away my pretty smile. Nobody can't take away that. Nobody can take away the love that he had for me, and nobody can take away the gift of writing that he clearly passed on to me. I just haven't manifested it yet, but it's coming because we're claiming it now. It's gonna happen, and we look forward to that. So, and I want to be one of the first ones you talk about it with when it does happen. I'll be looking forward and excited about that when it does happen. So, again, we celebrate you, blessings to you, and again, love all that you're doing and all that you represent. And to my listeners, if you've enjoyed our broadcast this evening, if you felt encouraged and uplifted in what we've talked about and discussed, and how we've just been, stripping off those layers and being vulnerable and transparent, please do subscribe, share, like, comment, because this is what the Blessings in the Streets podcast is about. having these honest, open-ended conversations that we're having, just really trying to make it clear, that, hey, we all go through our things and our stuff and our challenges. Nobody's sitting here being, perfect and acting like we got it all figured out. But one thing that we do know for sure is that in order to live life to the fullest, it begins with where you are rooted in Christ, having that relationship. And if you don't currently have that relationship, today is a mighty fine day to make that decision. And I promise you, it'll be the best decision that you ever make. We're not telling you something that we heard. We're telling you something that we both can attest to from firsthand, personal, one-on-one experience. It's mind blowing. It's unbelievable. It's beyond words. He loves us unconditionally. He wants nothing but the best for us. And guess what? He has plenty of love to go around for everybody. So you can get a piece of that too. You can experience the things that we've experienced. Not only will you realize personal blessings in your life, but you'll be equipped to be a blessing to so many other people, some that you know and some that God has not even positioned you quite yet to even meet. But he can set it up. He has the plan all together. You just got to buy into it and get aboard and just let him do his thing and just watch him do, again, just miraculous and wonderful things through your life and in the lives of others, using you as a vessel, guided by him, guiding those steps along that way. So with that said, remember, here at the Blessings in the Streets podcast, this is the place where your story is your glory, where your relationships are relevant, and your journey is your joy. I am your host, Joseph B. Roberts, and I thank you so much for tuning in. And until next time, again, keep fighting that good fight, keep leaning on to God, trusting him, embracing him, believing in him, letting him guide your way. He will not steer you wrong. He will not lead you astray. He will never leave you nor forsake you. He loves you too much and just wants you to just trust him and be with him and just watch him just, again, do wondrous and magnificent things in your life and in the lives of others. So until next time, you take care of yourself, and we'll look forward to seeing you again.